All right, I'd like to welcome everybody out here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're really looking forward, how's it going? We're really looking forward to presenting you with the information that we've been working on all this year. And just really excited about that. But before we get started, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Trent, would you mind leading us in that?
Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know you guys all recognize them, but I would like to recognize Mayor Marshall and Commissioner Wade Bittner, and also Sheriff Wimmer here today. So thanks guys for coming out. Real quick, I'd like to introduce you to the committee members that are joining me today. If you guys could just come up real quick and introduce yourself to the group, we appreciate it. Well, then you won't be on camera.
Really loud. I'm Maria Sweeten and I represent ERDA.
I'm Daniel Pacheco and I represent Tooele. Ken Sagers, I'm out from Vernon.
And again, I'm Erik Gumbrecht. And this project, go ahead and start on the next. What we're going to do today is we're going to share what the objective is of our study committee, the scope of work that we had over this past year, and the selection process of what we went through to be able to choose the form of government that we're recommending. Then we're going to go ahead and tell you what that recommendation is, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the presentation. If you guys have something that you need to further understand that you'd like to ask a question about, feel free, and I can expand on what's being discussed. So we'll go ahead and get started. Yep, got it. All right, so how did all this start? Well, in the 2016 election, there was actually, prior to that election, there was a signature gathering in order to do this particular study, and it was to consider and possibly recommend a change in the form of government. And there was signature gathering in order to make that go to the ballot. And when it reached the ballot, 65% of the citizens voted in favor of having a study to research and possibly recommend a new form of government for Tooele County. And so what we had to do from that point is to obey the Utah State Chapter 17-52, which talks about changing the forms of government. And there's a process by how that happens. And, you know, we obeyed that Utah State code. There was a selection committee formed. And the way that happened was the commission chose one person, the state legislators chose one person, and the petition drive committee chose one person. Those three people choose two people, which created a selection committee. So nobody directly chose anybody to be on this study committee. So that selection committee of 5 people then was able to choose up to 11 people to serve this county, and all of them are voluntary. In fact, this year, this study committee has put in over 1,000 volunteer hours. And that means that every week we've had a meeting that lasts about 2 hours. And that's just us kind of convening and talking about, you know, what's going on. But we've also done study outside of that, personal study, subcommittee meetings, visiting other counties. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit here. But these are the members that we started with. And one of the requirements is to be broadly represented in the county. And the selection committee did an excellent job of that. Most parts of the county have been very well represented. Rob Fossing from Lake Point, Whitney Cook from Grantsville. He later resigned, due to going to school. Brett Combs, he lived in Tooele, but he actually moved to Grantsville to work as a lawyer here. So he had to resign because you can't be a part of government and do this study because it's citizen driven. And Robin Douglas from Tooele, Brenda Faddis from Stansbury Park, Erik Gumbrecht from Tooele, Richard Mitchell, who was our chairman from Rush Valley, Howard Murray from Grantsville, and again, his life got pretty busy, so he resigned. Daniel Pacheco from Tooele, Kent Segers from Vernon, and Maria Sweeten from Erda. So as you can see, there's a very widely represented study from all over the county. Go ahead. All right, so the study was requested by the citizens due to the vote, and we're going to discuss the findings that we had in the study, and also our recommendations, and then the path forward. What happens, after we're done with the study? What's the next step that we take? So no matter what you guys need to know is, no matter what happens, it's the citizens that decide the future of Tooele County. So even if we make a recommendation for a change and that ends up on the ballot, it's you guys, it's the citizens who, and the people of this community that get to choose if they would like to keep the current system or to be able to accept another system. So our objective, in the state statutes in Chapter 52, Part 1, it says essentially that we need to compare all the forms of government together, the current form and the other 4 forms that could be considered, and see if they could possibly be strengthened, if the government could be strengthened, made more clearly responsive, more accountable to the people, and be improved in economy and efficiency. And these are the things that we were focused on during our study, to be able to see if, what form of government would be the best for the future of the county with regard to those things. All right, so the scope of our work, we wanted to make sure, go ahead and do it one more time. We wanted to make sure that this was process-based, that we're looking at processes and not specific people or anything like that. We're not basing the whole study off of current events, because we've had, the 3-member commission is the one that is established from the very beginning, no matter what. It's just the default form of government. So it's very easy for us to look at that as a system rather than talking about performance of individuals or things like that. Hey, how are you doing? Good, thanks for joining us. So the forms of government that we're comparing is the current 3-member commission, and we're comparing it with a 5 or 7-member commission, which would run the same, but you'd have more people, or a county executive council form, which is a council of individuals that would elect a county executive, kind of like what you have out here in Grantsville, or a county council and appointed manager, which is a council that would look for a professional manager and hire them based on their qualifications. So Richard, our chairman, he's excellent with these flow charts and things like that. What we thought of at first was we wanted to really have a look at the structure of the county and see how everything really looks currently at the county, because we wanted to be able to hone in on the scope of what our work is supposed to be. And this is how it looks right now. So you have several different departments, and a lot of people think that the county commission is just like, the people that run everything with the county, but that's actually not the case. they do have a lot of responsibilities, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the area of our focus is right here. So this county commission, they run about $17.2 million worth of the budget, and they have about 75 employees overall between the three commissioners. Now these here are, so state appointed officials actually are the people that choose, like the director of the health department, and then the justice court and the county extension. And you've also got the airport authority board, which represents about $6.55 million worth of the budget and has about 18 employees. And you've also got all of your elected offices. And those elected offices are the treasurer, the sheriff, recorder and surveyor, the auditor and clerk, the county attorney, and the assessor. The way that those kind of work is the county commission, they work as liaisons with them to be able to help them with any questions that they might have about policies. The county commission also helps to ensure that laws and ordinances are kept with those various groups. But ultimately, those departments, they work for you directly as the people. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So that's our study area, is the county commission. So we're going to talk a little bit about the executive side for now. So there's two sides. There's the legislative, which you have the three-member commission making legislative decisions with regards to laws and things like that. But you also have the executive side, getting your snow pushed and stuff like that. So to break it down a little bit, again, it's $17.2 million. And the way that they oversee these departments, they assign a third of the county to each other as far as being a liaison or a manager over these various departments. And the way that it's set up right now on the executive side is that one commissioner is over the Desert Peak Complex and Human Resources. And another commissioner is over Facilities Management, Parks and Recreation, Information Technology, the Roads Department, Solid Waste, and Emergency Management. So those are all under Commissioner number 2. The third commissioner doesn't have any executive assignments, so probably spends the bulk of their time dealing with being a liaison with the elected offices. So the form of government study that we're doing, it does apply exclusively to this subset of county government. And again, it's $17.2 million of the overall budget. All right, so one thing that we did in the very beginning was we wanted to put together a criteria. And one reason we did that is because we wanted every single person on this committee to have their own say, because they're all representing different areas. And we did the criteria because we didn't want it to be a situation or a circumstance where one person on the committee could sway everyone else to vote a certain way. What we did was we allowed every single person on the committee to analyze the forms of government and the information that we were able to obtain. And they were able to rank based on the criteria, how they felt the different forms of government matched. So it took away a lot of that bias and gave an opportunity for everybody to participate equally. So some of the things that we did was that we interviewed and sought feedback from county leadership and county employees. We interviewed every single department head. We interviewed the commissioners, and we put out surveys. Daniel played a huge role in that, getting that information out to the county employees so they could have a say in how they feel about the current form and some possibilities of, what they would prefer. We also had speakers come in with Envision Utah and Utah Association of Counties, and we also had the person who basically helped put together the law of how you do this process actually came out and spoke to us as well. So we had a lot of really cool things lined up and able to get a lot of really neat information. But the very most important thing that we did is that we went around the whole county and we went to visit the citizens to find out what they wanted. We compiled all of those findings and we put it together in that weighted ranking. And everybody had it on the committee had a chance to weigh things out how they feel based on the facts, how they felt everything should score. So, but actually, let me explain this part real quick. So, with an 11-member committee, it's really hard to run anything with 11 people and to get everybody to agree and stuff like that. One thing that Richard did as the chairman, which was genius, was he split us all up into subcommittees too. So we were helping support one another in areas that some of us were good with information gathering, some are good at technical writing, and having these 3 tiers of things of subcommittees really helped us out a lot to be able to accomplish the tasks at hand and stay focused and not have to have a lot of disagreements or things like that. Although with any large group, of course you'll have disagreements, right? So this right here that you see at the bottom, that was a schedule that we had to keep. And so that's really what pushed us, is knowing our deadlines of when we have to have information in and things like that. We're going to share a little bit of that with you pretty soon here. So what I was talking about, visiting the different parts of the county being the most important thing, it's because this is your guys' government. And we want you guys to have the opportunity to have the greatest say in what happens with that. And as we listened, these were the things that were very common that we heard from the citizens. The community greatly prefers having a district model over at large for accountability reasons. So a lot of people said, yes, we would like to have districts because we want to be able to elect somebody that we can hold accountable within our district. The community wanted to have a separation of legislative and executive government. So in the current system, the commission, they have both legislative decisions and executive decisions. And there's a lot of pros and cons that come with that. Things can be decided rather fast on the legislative side with a 3-member commission. And there's pros and cons we can talk about a little bit later. But the people, what they said was that they would like to have those powers separated. The community also wanted a lower cost form of government. Probably the number one question, everybody on the study committee can attest to this. Everyone's like, all right, you want to look at another form of government? How much is that going to cost us, right? The community also wanted more checks and balances. That was something that was talked about as well. And they wanted to have representatives that were more of a service-oriented, part-time type position, because they wanted to feel like, hey, the people that are in charge have their heart in this and they're doing it because they care. So there was a clear and unmistakable message that we received, and we based the majority of our decision off of that feedback that we got from the resident system. So the message that we received was that the people want greater representation, they want greater accountability, and they want to change away from the current form, and that they don't want taxes to be raised in the process. So from the committee, message received. We understand what you guys want, and we're going to do our very best to be able to deliver on that. So our recommendation. We recommend having a 5-member county council and an appointed manager. So the way that it would work is that there would be 5 districts, and all the representatives would be part-time, and you'd have an appointed manager with that would be a county employee and work full-time, and it would be a career position. So what we'd be looking for is somebody that you would actually hire, and they would have the qualifications to run things executively. And you would elect your council representatives. So this is a sample map, and I actually did some work in redistricting the last time that it happened. They provided an opportunity at the state to be able to draft up districts and to be able to suggest those to the committee. And I wanted to go ahead and give that a shot. So, Molly, you're fine. So I actually learned how districting works, and I had an opportunity to draft up maps, and actually one of the suggestions that I made was accepted, which is really cool. So I had a little bit of experience in doing that, and just thought, hey, maybe we could do it for this county too, just to see what it would look like. And I found an internet site that allowed me to be able to take the consensus data, and I split up all of the districts by an even number of population, and this is what that would look like. There's several different ways you could do it. This is just a sample. It's not something that has to be done this way or anything like that. But what needs to happen on these, you have to have equal population. The districts have to be contiguous, so they have to be well connected, and they have to be compact. So you would gerrymander it and draw like a big C, or do things according to like finances or anything like that. But you do want to do it by the interest and the needs of the people. So if this were to take place, there would be this process where these districts would happen. So the people that decide on the final districts would be the county commission. It's actually a process between the clerk's office where they help get things drafted up, but ultimately it sits on the commission table and they get to vote on the districts. But the process up until then, there would be meetings, and you'd want to come to them and express what you feel is important with the boundaries. And all that's by the state law, state code. So it has to be done that way. So for implementation, this is how it would work. The legislative transition would actually take place on the 1st of January in 2021. This is when the brand new 5-member council would be seated. So if this passes in November, this is how it's going to work. This is the way that we're planning it so far. So this year, you've got people who are filing to run to be a commissioner, and those commissioners who were elected would be helping to transition into the new form of government. So they would continue to work as they are for 2 years and help get ready for this transition. And then once the transition happens, those seated commissioners would then become council members. And they would be part of the 5-member council for 2 years. Then the election that happens in 2020, leading up through 2020, people would be running for the 3 council positions. Now the reason that this is really important that it's set up this way is things are a little bit backwards right now with the way that the elections happen. Right now you elect 1 commissioner during the presidential election, which is when most people are voting, but in the off elections, can't remember what they're called, but you elect 2 of your commissioners when there's less of a voter turnout. This process would actually create a change where the majority of your council that represents you would be during the presidential election. So on the executive transition, so how do you get your manager seated? It's the council that chooses them, so that presents a challenge, right? So what we did is we came up with a process based on kind of similar to what another county has done, and that is that you would appoint a selection committee that would help with the whole process of narrowing the candidates to see who would be most qualified to be the county manager. And they would publish the position description and requirements. And we're actually going to include that in our report, what we recommend should be the requirements for the position. And there's pre-screening, and they rank the applicants. So we also are recommending to use a professional headhunting company in order to find the most qualified people to be able to fulfill that type of a position. So all the applicants would be grouped together, and that committee would help kind of rank them and make the suggestions. Well, they would present their findings. So that would go on a year prior to the new council being seated. Once that new council is seated, they would be presented with all the information that they've studied and looked into, and that council would spend the next few months interviewing for that position to make the final decision. So, a great way for citizens to get involved in who runs the executive side. So, money. We're going to start talking money a little bit here. So, how much would you pay a council? That's the question that we're asking, because there's a huge range of salaries in this state for council members that range all the way from, here's one that makes about $140,000 a year, obviously a full-time position, all the way down to people that there's even some that do it for free, but on this chart we're narrowing it down to people that make $677 being on a council. So we wanted to make an educated decision, and we didn't want to just throw a number out there and say, well, this is how much a council member should make. So we actually ran the numbers, and the numbers are this. If you paid $20,000 a year to your council members, you would be in the top 85% of the state of Utah as to how much you pay council members. So even at that inexpensive of a price, you are paying in the 85 percentile for your council members. If you are somewhere between that, if you go up to 25,000, you're in the top 92%. So it's fair to say that it's very reasonable that we are extremely competitive if we're in that range, that 20 to 25,000 a year per council member. So I already kind of described that, but out of 677 council members in the state of Utah, which includes county and city, the 564 of them earn less than that $25,000 mark that we're talking about. So very competitive. So the appointed manager, how would that position work? It'd be an at-will employee. If they're not performing, that person can be released from their job. That's a huge benefit. They would make in salary between $90,000 to $120,000 a year. That's about what it takes to have the $120,000, for example, is what you would pay somebody who's worked 5 to 7, possibly more years in county or city government and had that experience and also has the degree in public administration, and that would be on the high end. On the low end, you're talking about maybe somebody who has like a bachelor's degree in business management, and we've talked a little bit about those qualifications. They would have benefits as well. They're a county employee, and we would like to potentially recommend a bonus for staying within the budget. To the point where, just like in general, if you do really well in operating in, you know, the public sector, I mean, in the private sector, you'll get a bonus or things like that. So just a little incentive in there. The termination, there would be a plan for with cause and without cause. If it's with cause, if they did something wrong, if they're not performing up to par, and it's well documented, then you just send it back in. There's no penalty for that. However, if it's, without cause, if you just want somebody else for no reason, then there would be a typical severance package that would be received. So, let me pause really quick. Does anybody have questions so far based on what we've discussed?
No benefit, right, for the part-time council member.
It's not finalized, we're actually gonna discuss it, but correct, right now, we talked about having no benefits. And I would actually like to hear from you guys toward the end of this, because we can take it to our meeting, this upcoming Thursday. But I'll give you kind of the perspective on both sides of that.
Did you compare compensation in city government too? I'm just curious if that was something you compared
We did.
at all.
Yep, those numbers are every council member in the state of Utah. So, because with county government, there's not a whole lot of councils to even compare to. But we wanted to see, because citizens were saying, hey, we're interested in somebody who's willing to, that serviceful person type. We wanted to get all of those numbers included together, because if you're a person who's willing to serve, you're probably willing to do it in either capacity. I'm sure you guys can appreciate that, so. So how much is this gonna cost? So at a salary, right now, the way that this kind of works is you have the 3-member commission, they're at a salary, once the next raise kicks in, it's around $90,000.
Slightly less.
Slightly less. So, like 89,000 something, right? Benefits end up averaging around $30,000. And the total for commission between those two things is about $120,000. There is 3 of them, and that equals $360,000. The 5-member council and manager, this is how it would be set up. You have $24,000 that you could pay to 5 people, which equals $120,000. The manager's salary would be it's not like on the high end that we talked about, it'd be about $120,000. And benefits and bonus would come to around $40,000 for that, for a total compensation of $160,000. So the total council manager setup would be $300,000, and the $60,000 would be a savings to the county in this form of government. So go ahead and hit the next 2. So the way that this would work would be, this is the easiest way to compare it, is that one commissioner with benefits equals the same as what your whole council would be making. So that's your trade-off right there, is that 5 council members is the same exact cost as one commissioner with their benefits. The manager's salary is the same as a commissioner plus benefits. So the remaining balance is the benefits and the bonus that a county manager would have that you would compare to the 3rd commissioner. And when you figure the difference, it's about $60,000 of the difference in the form of government.
Did you find any council people that are not getting benefits?
Yes.
Frequently, the city people get them, but I'm not aware of any councilmen that don't get benefits. That's the city. Well, I know that I said city did, but the county, I'm not aware of any county councilmen that don't get benefits.
That's part of an area we're gonna be studying further, because when you say benefits, right, there's a whole different package in itself. Are you talking health benefits, are you talking employee perks, or other types of benefits? So we'll be looking further into that.
Right, so I can actually answer that pretty simply. So Cache County, for example, they were people who didn't have it, and they at one point were willing to offer the benefits, but it would subtract off of their actual stipend. So if they wanted the benefits, then they wouldn't get it. So yes, there is an example of that.
Well, but the majority probably don't. do that?
There's only,
What's
very
that?
few,
Some Salt Lake will get benefits.
right, and so, let's take Summit, for example, okay? So they're in a completely different economic situation, and they actually, started out without it, but they decided to do the benefits because their people were dealing with a lot of land use issues, and they ended up working more full-time, but they still make a less than full-time type salary. But, it really just depends on what the needs of the county are, and Tooele County is so different in comparison to everything. But the real thing that's important is not, are we gonna be the same as other counties? What's really important is, are people gonna be willing to fill those seats and to do that job? And with the figures that I showed earlier, that is an absolute yes. That we're gonna be paying a lot more than what the council will typically make. So it's an absolute yes. Whether we have benefits or not, it's going to be well worth it and it'll be well compensated.
Did you talk to Morgan County?
Yes. So,
We decided, we figured out what the demographics would be if we would be looking at the pricing. Are you looking at potentially getting younger family people?
I mean, that's-
with costs?
Yeah.
What's wrong with retired people?
Nothing, but we are a growing county with many
Yep.
young families and young people on
We're envious.
representation.
And I'm gonna answer that question, and then we're gonna have to keep going through this, and then, at the end, I'll answer a lot more questions. But yes, we did look into that, and obviously, with a part-time council, that opens up the pool of people that could apply for that position a lot larger than what we're pulling from right now. Right now, you have a pool that will only accept people that are willing to work full-time. So anybody that has a full-time job is not even going to be wanting to apply. That would change with the council. You have a whole slew of people that would be able and willing to apply to work on the council. They don't have to have a full-time job and also do the council, which also it keeps it, anybody who could currently apply to be a commissioner could apply to be a council member as well. All right, so the way that this organization would look, just to show you guys, you have the county council of 5 people, and they would have legislative responsibilities. And those legislative responsibilities are the things like making sure that the county code, they create laws that go into the county code. They plan, approve, and monitor the budget. And they also would make a lot of board appointments, potentially. We're still discussing that a little bit to decide how it should lay out with board appointments. And there's also, they would oversee the county manager as well, and just ensure that performance is good there. But you would have a separation of those responsibilities. So the people that the county manager manages would be within their purview, and there's only certain instances in which there would ever be like an override of things like that. So, all right, so the recommended executive organization. So how would that work with the county manager? We have a matrix that we put together that we're going to gift to the county, and it essentially would help everybody in county know what their duties and responsibilities are, and kind of the do's and don'ts of each position. And so there's 3 different types of organizations that get managed in the county. There are shared services, these are the services that almost everybody utilizes in some way. So you got human resources, they have to help with a lot of things, facilities management, and also parks and recreation. And these departments would be under the purview of the county manager. So the county manager, well, let me quickly tell you the other 2 here. So there's also the county services like emergency management, roads department, and county engineering, and enterprise organizations like Deseret Peak, Solid Waste, and Wendover Airport. So what would the county manager be managing? They would manage $15.5 million of the budget directly. They would have 8 people that are direct reports to them, and they would have a total of 74 employees under them. So comparatively, Sheriff Wimmer, how many employees do you have under your purview? Over 100. So reasonable to believe that a county manager could be able to manage a scope of that many people, okay? As far as the direct reports, this is something that, this setup feels very familiar to me because I've had circumstances as a hotel manager that I've had direct reports from several departments, and to be able to utilize those people's services in order to oversee an employee count that high. So, but does that give you guys kind of an idea of what the county manager would typically oversee? And the only other things that the county manager would do, they would assist in helping the other departments with the budget a little bit. They have coordinating responsibilities. And then they also can audit the various departments. So yes, you have elected official departments, but if you want to have checks and balances in place, you want to make sure that they're following the law, right? So both the legislative and executive side can go in and audit to make sure everything's good. All right. Hit it again. All right. So we're pretty much at the end. But I want to ask you guys some. I want you guys to have the opportunity to ask questions now, and I'm just really interested to see what you guys think about this recommended form of government. Comments, questions? Don't be shy.
Remind me, going to the council, those are nonpartisan, or they are partisan?
So by state statute, you cannot have a nonpartisan council. There is a couple counties that do utilize it, but they were grandfathered in. Earlier, Morgan County was mentioned. That's actually a county that's a very weird comparison because they put a council into place and they never got a manager. So they're effectively trying to operate either as a council or it's like a council that has to try to do commission type responsibilities. And it's been it's put them in difficult circumstances in some cases. But you cannot have nonpartisan, it has to be partisan.
Who audits the manager?
So the council, again, that's the manager's boss. So if he's not performing properly, if he's not keeping with the laws and ordinances, or she, yeah. Good point, Holly. But yes, that's where they are held accountable. And so if there's anything shady going on with the county manager, that could be reported to the legislative side, and that council can decide to
I have one more.
he or she.
He or she, is this city manager, or county manager, is this person going to legislature, or will we have our elected officials?
So it really depends, because there's a lot of different boards and committees that our current commissioners serve on. And so those committees, they have a lot of different requirements between all of them. Some of them require you to be an elected official to be able to vote. So they would have to go to those. The council would have to show up to those. But some of those, you could actually send another county employee. So if perhaps it's about roads, maybe you want to send your director of the roads department to that. So there's a lot of different opportunities and benefits, and that's information that we were hoping to get, and we haven't been able to receive yet that information to be able to assess where would we appropriate, these council members or the manager or various employees at county? How would we be able to, separate that and make sure that the county is well represented? So we're hoping to get that information at some point.
So how will the meeting be run? Do you have a chair for the council?
Yes, you do have a chair for the council. You also have the ability to have a vice chair. So in the chair's absence, the vice chair takes over. If both of them are gone for some reason, they actually can hold, they have to be in quorum, but they can hold a vote to see which person will run the meeting for the time being. But it would be very similar to how you guys probably currently do things in the city as far as running the meeting.
Except the council manager will not be involved with that task.
The appointed manager?
Uh-huh.
So the appointed manager would come to most of the meetings, but you are correct. They would not be part of the legislative decision making.
I'll just add that it's very similar to school district, the way the superintendent and the school board work. The school board is the legislative, the superintendent is executive. And, even right down to legislature, it's, I've worked for nonprofits most of my life, I've done the school board. It is very common that during the height of legislature, you've got the superintendent there, you've got different school board members attending different meetings, doing networking and whatnot. They do that same type of operation. You're creating a team here, but you're just really delineating who's doing what function.
Thank you, Daniel. More questions? We love questions. Go ahead.
Mine might be as much comment to this question, but probably just more confirmed. So anyone running for this year's commission seat
Correct.
will not know if they're gonna transition to a council member until the end of the election,
Right.
until election.
Yeah, so I would highly encourage, anybody that's planning on running to take that into consideration. Are you a person that could do either of those things? Are you willing to be transitional, or are you willing to work it full-time all the way through?
So I usually bounce back to that graphic, the timeline.
So, these two positions up here, that's how they'll play out. Go ahead, Jewel.
So at this point, is the decision to switch to this kind of resting on the commissioners to give a go signal for the citizenry to vote on it?
So there's two different paths. We, as a study committee, we want to be focused on our work and getting that report in. And we want it to be a good quality report that the commission can look over. And we're actually going to make the bulk of the report public. And the community will be able to go in and suggest edits of things that they would like to see in there. And so it's going to, as we release that information, we do ask that you guys participate and help us out with that. But then we're going to be turning in this report, we're hoping by the end of this month. It's due, I believe, the 9th of February. I could be wrong on that. But we're going to have that turned in and
Turned into?
to the commission. Thank you. Actually, first it goes to legal. Legal has 30 days to go through it and see if there's some things that need correcting. We are a volunteer-based group. We've done a lot of study, but there are potential things that could happen, like maybe we missed something in the code, and we would just look to them to be able to help us to make that corrected, and then we would be able to deliver that to the commission to vote on. So at that point, the commission could go through it, and they will be holding a vote, and that vote isn't, do you agree with keeping the current system, or do you want the new system? That's not what the vote is. The vote is, do you want to allow the people to be able to decide come November? And if they say no, then the route, that has to be taken is to gather enough signatures to be able to put it on the ballot. If they vote yes and allow the people to have that choice come November, then it just, goes onto the ballot. So,
And it's very important to understand that that is not the role of this committee. So, as an example, when we're done and we submit this thing, I say, see you later, alligator, and walk away from this entire thing. It's up to whoever else wants to either wait for the commission to say, put it on the ballot, or for individuals to say, we're gonna do our own petition drive, get it on the ballot.
Same time frame?
what's that?
It would be the same time frame either way?
So this is the time frame that would take place if it got put on the ballot and the citizens decided, I want to make a change, this is how it would look. So, if it was placed on the ballot and the citizens just, decided that they'd rather not make the change, then this all goes away and you still have, the same 3-member commission that you currently have. You had a question?
Did you evaluate the strengths of the 3-member commission?
We did. So if you go to studytooelecounty.com, we have all of our reports of everything that we've studied and also a sampling of the weighting system that we used in order to decide that. And every person on the committee had a chance to look at all 5 of these forms of government. And in a group of 11 people, were able to study that. And then by the time we took a vote, every person was able to have an individual say in how they would weigh out those various different forms. So it was a really cool process because it's not like if one person preferred a certain form, then it has no bearing effect on what everyone else in the way that they weighed it. But we did evaluate that very closely.
What did you find were the strengths?
Of the 3-member commission? Sorry.
Can I jump in here on this? Because one of the things that I came across in the information I gathered was that some of the strengths were some of the weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that several of us found that out as we went through this process and we went through that weighting, is that the strengths that we heard from, the weaknesses that we heard from our constituents were some of the strengths that we felt the commission brought to the table. And as we listened, oftentimes a strength became a weakness and a weakness became a strength.
Yeah.
And as we reported out verbally, remember, that was, we had many aha moments that night, or those nights that we discussed that.
Yeah.
And it's all on they're all on, the videos are all on the website, and the rankings and the weightings are all on the website.
But were you able to talk to people who have been parts of both the commission and the council? Or did you hear their testimony?
I guess
When we visited other counties, is that what you mean?
In any of your studies?
We visited with first off, we had the one-on-one interviews with the current commissioners, the department heads and directors. We did that locally. We went out with external counties that we went to visit, and we did an online survey that was sent statewide.
Yeah.
And
If
all
you're
that data
asking,
is all compiled into spreadsheets and whatnot.
if you're asking on interviews of the legislative and executive side, is that your question? If we
No, what I
interviewed them?
was referring to is, in my experience, I was working in Salt Lake County when they made the transition from 3-member commission to the 7 council at that time, and they've expanded it to 9 now. And Commissioner Horiuchi was a good friend. And after he spent a year in the council for me, he said, why did we do this? We have more difficulty making decisions. We have less representation. It takes us a lot more time to get the work done. And frankly, it costs a little over $3 million to make that transition. And so, that's a concern. Their support people went from 6 as a 3-member commission to 32. And in talking with one of the councilmen, she said, hey, I pay my executive assistant, which each one of the councilmen have, more than you get as a salary. And so I want you to be really careful to recognize the costs that are in there that you have not been able to identify.
That's not fair to say that we haven't identified that, because you're actually right now comparing Salt Lake County to Tooele County. And the way that they do things are a lot different. And you can even see in the counties of the other forms of government, they haven't followed that same suit. You can look at Cache County, that's twice the size of our county, and they are operating on an executive that's elected and 1 secretary. That's their whole executive side of the leadership, and they have a council of 7 members. And they haven't expanded, and they actually make a lot less per council member than what we're talking about. So it's very dangerous to assume that this county is going to go in the same direction that Salt Lake County is. It's just not, it's not a fair comparison. And we did visit with Salt Lake County, and that Salt Lake County, we were able to meet with people from both the legislative side and the executive side and get their feedback. And their feedback was very positive with the new form as far as the way that it functions. So, and it's not to say there isn't pros and cons. I respect, and I know for sure that you definitely prefer the 3-member commission system. And I can actually very much respect that and respect your opinion of how you feel that that would operate. What we're asking as a committee is, let's bring that discussion to the table for the citizens and let them decide. I think that that's the thing that would be the best thing to do. So I would encourage that.
So I know you addressed that, as a committee, you're trying to stay objective, or not trying, but your objective, once your job is done, you're not necessarily advocating for, is that right? I don't know. As a citizen, will you be outspoken about what you think about this process? Okay,
so just to further clarify that, as a committee, we don't want to be, while we're sitting on the committee, gathering signatures and things like that. We just want to make sure that we're as ethical as possible. And that doesn't mean that we don't have disagreements or opinions or things like that. But we felt that it's important that if somebody were to get involved in things like that, like I'm a very active person politically. If I were to do something like that, I would resign before I would do that. What we're saying is that we want, as a body on this committee, we want to be able to present the information. And do we feel a bias towards a specific form of government right now? Absolutely. Because when we all started this, one of the big reasons that we were selected is that we didn't yet have a bias. And the job of this study committee was to develop that bias, to find out what it is that's going to be the very best thing for the future of Tooele County. And as a combination of the study that we did and listening to the citizens and what they want, and the over 1,000 hours that we put in to this, we feel confident and comfortable that the form of government we're recommending is the right one. And we actually with a lot of the votes that we've taken, have really agreed on a lot of these things, which is really remarkable considering that each individual on this committee is a professional by their own right and has very different backgrounds, and we're from different areas, and we were all able to come together and be able to agree on a lot of these things, which in a group that large, that says a lot. So we're really excited, and we really want to have the opportunity to be able to have this come before the people.
we made the commitment that we would fulfill this charge and do it in such a manner that we met the criteria and fulfilled the charge under the criteria to the best of our ability and in the most factual manner that we could. And that's what we're doing. And once we present that to the commission, and once that report is done, we're released from this. And Thursday night becomes family time again. And what we do after that, if I decide to do something to help move something forward in this county, is my personal choice. It's like it's going to be Erik's or Daniel's or Kent's or Rob's or anyone else's. It's not a joint, it's not going to be a group decision.
We don't have to give up our voice, and we don't have to give up that opportunity, but we want to do it appropriately.
So as soon as you present it to the commission, then the committee takes the call.
You're done. Not necessarily, because we actually have, till July that changes could be made to the report. And so, you know, some people might want to help make sure that happens, but, as far as how that would work, the logistics of it as far as state code, we would have to check with people on that. But essentially our work would be done. You're correct about
If it's accepted and.
Were your costs underwritten by the county? Like, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure it costs you a lot of money to be traveling and stuff. Did the county pay for anything?
Oh, so that's real interesting, because
$68.
I'm not even bringing that up because I'm not certain.
So nobody has yet submitted money for like gas or anything like that. Kent, I want to give him props right now, okay? Because more than anybody, he's spent the most gas going back and forth. He's from Vernon, and he commutes all the way to and from there to be able to participate in our weekly meetings in Tooele City. And so, and he's never, I don't want to pressure you or anything, because it is within your ability. He could ask for reimbursement, but no, we haven't had expenses like that. The only expenses that we've had so far are, we've spent some on advertising with the transcript and with boosting posts on Facebook. And that's because we want people to be involved. We want people to feel like they're a part of this process. And it's important for us to spend part of the budget on engaging people. We've also, we don't know how this is gonna work out on the financials, but we wanted to request reports from the various departments to see how expenses are going and stuff like that, to figure out if there's an area for recommendation that we need to focus on, or costs involved with being a council member or whatnot. And we were told that we would have to pay for grandma request information, and we don't yet know if that applies against our budget or not. So, but those have been our largest expenses. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we treat you like every other citizen.
Okay.
So you're gonna take your own money and pay for your own grandma?
All right. But those have been the bulk of our expenses.
I'm just curious, I understand you guys, being someone who appreciates smaller government, that I know well, I hope I get to grow in it, instead of 3, we have 5, there's potentially too many chefs. If we're doing something that isn't different.
Let me share this. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say, my feeling is that the more voices that you have making those decisions, the better off you're gonna get having the will of the people being represented there. And the thing about doing it with the manager and the commission is that the manager is going to carry out the policy and the wishes of those 5 commissioners, okay? The council, thank you, the 5 council members, but they are gonna be representing you personally in your district, whatever, however they're gonna come out to get these people elected. You're gonna have more of a representation on there than you would have personally, because the separation of power between the manager, the legislature, the executive session, parts of the government, our federal government is set up that way. The president is the executive branch, and the House and Senate are the legislative. And you just have more representation by having more voices.
And this, so I was able to find this report, which is really cool. And what it does is it mathematically shows you what the best decision-making size group is. And so basically, it's a lot more complicated than what I'm about to present to you. But essentially, this is a group size between 0 and 8, and also the number of interactions that a group would have in decision-making. And what they found is that 5, and to be very, very specific, 4.8 is the perfect amount of balance between whether you have, between making your decision-making the correct speed and having the correct accuracy. So the lesser people you have, the lesser the accuracy is in decision-making. But there comes a time when if you have a group of 20 people, is the truth going to get muddled between those people? So mathematically, the way it works out to be is that 4.8 is the optimum number in order to have the correct speed of making decisions. So on a 5-member council, what's cool is that not only is the form of government that we talked about cheaper, but 5 people making those decisions, they can take the extra time necessary to make important decisions and to figure out, like if something is really, really super important, like let's say selling a racetrack or combining or separation of offices, things like that, that you want to have, that you want to spend more time on. With a group of 5 people, what you would aim to do, and what it kind of says in this article, is with a group of 5 people, you want to do your very best to reach consensus on the big decisions. And on the small decisions, the things that aren't going to have a huge bearing effect, you would not spend a whole lot of time on it. You would just immediately, after educating yourselves on the subject, you don't waste time on it. You go ahead and you decide something as a committee. So with 5 people, you can be fast when you need to, you can be slow when you need to. And that's a tremendous advantage that we felt was important to be able to do that. It's not to say that a 3-member commission couldn't make an excellent decision. It's not to say that a 7-member council couldn't make the right decision or an excellent decision. It's just between those 2 things, your speed of choice making and your accuracy of the choice, a 5-member council is the one that outweighs. So,
I just want to comment on the part-time position. I think that's nice because, like you said, it opens up the positions to more people that we serve. Whereas, somebody can do a full-time job, they just don't even run. So I like it.
any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate you coming out. And I just want to say, and if any other committee members would like to speak to, feel free. But this has really been a labor of love that we've done. It's been very difficult. being able to, set aside the time that it takes to do this. And I just have so much respect and love for the people that I've served with on this committee. And you guys are just awesome, and I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you guys for coming out here. I would like to see more people engage, but it really means a lot that you guys care and want to be able to come out and see what we got planned.